Today on the podcast, I'm joined by Lina Miller from Decode by Heart. Lina is an educator with over 20 years experience, as well as a mom of two, and she is a published author. Lina wrote a book series called Jax and Ren, which is a decodable book series. In this podcast episode, Lina and I talk all about what decodable books are and why they are so important for beginning readers, especially those in preschool, kindergarten, and first grade. If you have any questions about this episode, you can find me on Instagram. I'm at Littles Love Learning Blog. You can also reach out to Lina. She's on Instagram at Decode by Heart. Hey, Lina. Thanks for coming to the Littles Love Learning podcast.
Hi, thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm super excited to interview you. I was just saying before I hit record that I want to dive into your story. We connected on Instagram, of course. That's where I meet all of the best educators who all share such a similar mission, trying to help students and families understand how to teach their kids to read. But before we
Yes,
get into all of that, let's back way up and let's talk about your journey and how you became a teacher and what inspired you to get into education.
sure. Okay, so for as long as I can remember, I've always wanted to be a teacher. I love learning about everything and I love being around kids. And I kind of joke with my sister that she was valedictorian of her of her class. And I always joke, I was like, she was valedictorian because she had the best teacher because I always used to force her to play school with me. So I kind
So
of just
cute.
laugh about that. Yeah. So basically, I went into college to be a teacher, and my official teaching career started as a third and fourth grade special education teacher at Lake Forest South Elementary in Harrington, Delaware. And then I moved into not just, but a general third grade classroom for a couple of years. And then after that, um, we had the opportunity to have a math specialist. So I became a math specialist, which, I know is part of my story. But I did that for about 5 years. And then due to the growth in the population of my school, that position was removed or eliminated. And I found myself back in the classroom. And actually, when my principals called me down, they sat me down and said, okay, we're going to need you to teach first grade. And I cried because I was like,
Oh
I
no.
don't know what I'm going to do with first grade. But it turns out that first grade was my favorite, and I absolutely love teaching first graders. Um, it was just so much fun. The kids grew so much in their learning, and while teaching first grade, I also was part of a TAM classroom. I don't know what different states call it. It's like the team approach to mastery. So there was two teachers in a classroom, and we had regular and special education students. And this is where I believe that my love for literacy really blossomed. I had students who barely knew their letters and letter sounds when they came to first grade, but by the end of the year, they were becoming readers. And I thought that was really amazing for those kids. They were super excited. And then most recently, in the last 5 years, I am currently an academic interventionist at a K to 3 school. And I help kids with reading, and then I have a few math groups. But this is my 22nd year, and I've all been at the same school. So that's pretty
Oh,
exciting.
wow. That is really unique. Not many teachers can say that.
Nope, not at all. There's a few of us here. We call ourselves the OGs.
I love that. And you really have experience in so many different areas because you've done general education, you've done special education, now you're doing intervention, so you have small groups. So, what would you say if you had a favorite, or what is your favorite part about working in education?
Honestly, it's I think helping the kids feel successful. They come in, some of them are very defeated at this point by the time I see them in intervention. And I want them to know that you can do it. Let's find where you need to start, and everybody has an individual path. So we're taking this step by step to see how much you can grow. And I think that it helps the kids, I think, just know that they can do it.
That's so empowering. Let's start them where they are and let's move them along, but it's not comparing them to where they quote unquote should be. We're just trying to help them move along that continuum. I love that.
Correct. Yes.
Now, you mentioned that you are a math brain. You talked a little bit about the math position that you had, but when you were teaching first graders, you really did fall in love with literacy. And now that is really what you are sharing about most online, which is
Yeah.
so cool.
I would
So
not
I
ever really find myself here. It's surprising to me as well.
But it's so needed. It's so necessary, especially first grade. Like you said, they come in knowing their letters and sounds, maybe being able to read a little bit. But by the time they leave, we have these fluent readers who we're working on their comprehension, we're working on their writing. It's just the most amazing year. I taught first grade for 6 years. I
Oh,
absolutely love first grade. And there's just so much that goes into it.
yes.
Now, one of the things that we need our first graders to do as they are learning how to read is practice. Practice, practice, practice. They need so much practice. And we, as educators, know that the best way for them to practice is using decodable books. Now,
Yes.
I talk about decodable books a lot on my social media and in my emails, and hopefully, podcast listeners know what decodable books are. But in case they don't, can you please explain to us what decodable books are and how they're different from traditional picture books or chapter books or even leveled readers that parents might hear those terms?
Decodable books are books that focus on a specific phonics skill. And they have already been taught that skill, or that's the skill that they're practicing reading. Basically, I say in contrast, level readers, they vary in their difficulty, but they don't necessarily follow a specific pattern or progression. They include words that they probably haven't been exposed to their phonics patterns yet. Um, and then picture books, on the other hand, focus more on storytelling and often contain words that don't follow patterns as well. So, but they're also useful because they introduce kids to rich vocabulary and their different language structures. Um,
Absolutely.
but I feel like decodable readers are so important. They're carefully written so that students can practice what they've learned. It builds their confidence for sounding out words. I mean, one of the worst things I feel like is you hear a parent say, well, just sound it out. And you're looking at the word and you're like, oh, they're not going to be able to sound that.
Right.
And then the kids feel like, well, I am sounding it out. And they become frustrated and feel like they can't do it, which is completely the opposite of what we want a decodable reader to be.
It's so important that they're controlled. The words in the story and the sentences in the story are controlled based on the phonics skills the child has learned so far.
So,
Because I have heard the same thing. I had a friend tell me she thought her little one who was learning how to read should be able to read the word me. But when he
mhm,
went to sound it out, he said, meh. Of course he did, because he's learned the short vowel E sound. And that is totally normal for that age. He hasn't been taught long vowel E, he hasn't been taught open syllables. And so, if there were to be a leveled reader that had the word me in it, he's not ready for that. And so, that's why it's really important that we have something like decodable readers so that kids can practice just the phonics skills that they've been taught and they can feel successful and not get frustrated because there are going to be so many skills they have to learn. But in the beginning, we just go one step at a time.
exactly. Exactly.
Now, decodables are more common in schools. I would really love for them to be in libraries. That's my goal. My mission is to get them in libraries. But even so, there's just not that many decodable series for families. There's some that come with curriculums or literacy programs that schools can purchase, but there's not that many that are accessible to parents if they would like to purchase them for their child to practice at home. And you saw that problem in the marketplace and you thought, you know what, I can solve this problem. And you created a whole series of decodable books. So I want to hear all about that.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you. I was going to say that's exactly word for word. I feel like my mission. I in my first grade classroom, I ended up creating a lot of materials for my students. Because I really didn't love the curriculum that we were using at the time. So, I took whatever phonics skill that was part of the curriculum and I used to write decodable sentences that just built on the skills that they learned and added in the high frequency words that we were required to teach as well. So, like I said, I would go to the classroom library and be like, these poor kids don't have anything to read that is controlled enough for them to feel successful. And a lot of times the kids would go to books with recognizable characters like Fly Guy or Pete the Cat, or characters from like cartoon shows. And they'd be excited because, we've been making great progress. And then they would feel really discouraged. And even the books that are labeled like I Can Read or Step Into Reading, those are not truly decodable books either. And I feel like, parents are kind of misled in the sense like, oh, well, my child should be able to read this book. And it was very, difficult for I think the kids and parents to really pick up a book and not be able to read it. So I looked and I looked and I really couldn't find anything. So I was like, I guess I'm going to write my own. So I basically wanted to make it broad enough because, like you said, they are part of curriculums where you could do just, the am family or the at family or focus on just one vowel at a time. And because, most basic readers or when kids are learning to read, they're learning short vowel words like the CVC words. I wanted to have a series that focused broadly on the CVC or short vowels. Um, so that's kind of where I started. And, I was like, what can I write about? And so I literally took a notebook and I wrote down like every CVC word that I could think of. And then, which ones could be named. So that's how I came up with Jackson Wren. And then what kind of animals are CVC words? Oh, a cub and a fox. So, I tried really hard to make it easy for kids to read and be able to practice their phonics skills. But also, it was important for me to create characters that the kids could relate to and be like, oh, I want to read a Jackson Wren book. And, that was really important to me as well.
That's so true that those guided readers, those leveled readers in the library, all have their favorite characters. And then they pick one up, and their parents think, oh, they should be able to read this. It says step one or it says level one. First of all, those steps and levels mean nothing. They absolutely mean nothing, but they want to read those books because of the characters. So I love how you decided instead of just making decodable books, you were going to make characters. You were going to make these lovable characters that kids were going to want to read about different adventures that they go on. And you even have swag that goes along with Jackson Wren, which is so smart because that's how you really hook kids' interests.
Yes, I was going to say actually, my niece, and she's older. She's in fourth grade now, Allie, and she obviously can very easily read these Jackson Wren books. But for Halloween, they were dressed up like your favorite book character, and she wanted to be Wren from Jackson Wren, and I was like,
Oh
that
my
is just
gosh,
the sweetest.
that is
So
so sweet.
yes, definitely a
I
full circle
imagine
moment there. Yeah.
next year and the year after, you're going to have even more kids dressing up like Jackson Wren, which is so
Oh,
cool.
thank you.
So let's talk about the process just because I'm super curious. I have written decodable books for the members of my course. I have a reading course called Play Quick Start and Play Quick Start Plus. And so I know how difficult it is to write decodables, making sure that I'm controlling for what I've taught so far. But mine are just little printables that they can print and practice. You actually have physical books with beautiful illustrations, full color. So how did you go about that journey of finding an illustrator and getting them published?
Oh my gosh. Sometimes I still feel like I am building my plane as I'm flying it. But I was able to hook up with a friend. So my sister works for another school district and I was talking to her about wanting to put my books into print and she was like, "Oh, you should talk to Kim Weber." She did a whole book series. She's a kindergarten teacher on her dog Penny. So she does books, Penny the Pup Presents, and so I met up with her and she actually published through Amazon. So it's like their Kindle Direct Publishing. And that is the route that I ended up going. But I had to find an illustrator, and that in itself found to be very tricky. So I went on to Fiverr and commissioned maybe three different people's portfolios for illustrators, and one of them was a wash. It just never even panned out. And then another one, sent me back the Jackson Wren drawing. I was like, well, I really, it's okay. Like, it's a nice picture, but it's not what I was looking for. And then when Lana Lee sent me hers back, I was like, this is it. These are Jax and Wren, the perfect characters. She like nailed it. And it's really awesome. She actually, it was online. So, they could be from anywhere around the world, but she actually is from Pennsylvania. So it's not very far from Delaware at all. And we actually met in person and
Oh, cool.
it was super cool. And I feel like she feels my vibes.
That's so cool. You've done 5 books together so far?
Yes, 5 books. Yeah. And so after, I would send her my transcript and then, I would write little notes like what I think they should be doing on that page. And then she would send me back a sketch. And then, we would talk about it. And then she would add color. And then if there's anything that we needed to change. So, I mean, it is a back and forth process, but she made it really simple for me.
What a labor of love. Oh my goodness.
Yes.
So you have these Jackson Run books. I think there are 5. Are they all for the short vowels right now?
Yes. So, and actually, the 5 is my short vowel, I guess, series is what you would call it. My goal, I kind of have been toying with one, going backwards and just doing a letter and letter sound book. I have this vision of this alphabet sounds book. Um, but then I'm like, oh, well, these readers are already ready to move on. My next set, I envision hopefully is going to be consonant blends. So just longer, continuing short vowels, but, longer short vowel words.
Oh, that warms my heart because I love when we move on from CVC words to longer words, but still with short vowels. I don't want
Yes,
to jump into Magic E just yet. I really want them to have more practice with consonant blends at the beginning and the end, just working on
correct.
their short vowels.
Yes, yes,
Oh,
that's exactly
that
true.
makes my heart so happy. Well, what I appreciate also about your books, like I said, parents can buy them because I wish that libraries carried decodable books. In fact, our library allows us to request purchases, and I have requested them to purchase decodable books. They have not yet. They told me they're looking into it, but I'm going to work on them. But it's so important to me that parents understand this time of your child's life, reading decodable books, it's not going to last that long. I
No,
understand that. So you probably don't want to invest hundreds and hundreds of dollars in books that your child is only going to need for maybe a year or two or three, depending on their progress, but they need the books. They really do. It is such an important investment. I invested in them for my kids, and now I am sharing those books with other people now when their kids need them. So if you can, I know not every family is able to purchase books, but if you can, it's so important. You can purchase them and then maybe sell them or share them with someone else because your child does need so much practice and they need it from a variety of places. So, like I said, I have little decodables in my course, but I also want my course members to have other books, like your books, that I can recommend because I know that they are controlled. I know that they are following a specific scope and sequence. It's such an important investment, in my opinion.
oh, I couldn't agree more. And I've been actually working, also trying to get books because, like you said, books are an expense and not everybody has the money to spend on them. So I've been trying to get them into libraries. I mean, I do have them in hardback. So there are libraries that are picking them up. I am actually working with the Decodable Book Alliance. It's an organization called teachmykidtoread.org. And their mission is to get decodable books into libraries. So I am part of that. And that is like our mission. We're trying to get them there because, like you said, not everybody can afford to buy books, or that they are for a short amount of time. And, people don't want to make that investment as well, but they are 100% important in learning how to read.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh, I've never heard of this alliance. I'm so excited to look them up. I would love to be a part of this because that's so important to me when I go into my library and see the whole shelf of guided readers, leveled readers, and then we just have this one little tiny Bob book down at the bottom. I
Right.
just think, oh, that is not what parents need. And it's just confusing for parents because they think, oh, it says level one, my child should be able to read that. And that's not the case.
Exactly. And actually, I get that question a lot. I set up in different places like vending spaces, and people will ask me, is this a level one reader? And I will have to tell them, well, this is, my books are not leveled, this is based on the principles of CPC or short vowels, and this is what beginning readers would read. And, some of them look at me and I'm like, these are the skills that are included in this book. If your child is able to blend these sounds together, then this is the perfect place for them to start.
And that's where we're moving to. We're trying to educate all teachers the importance of following the phonics scope and sequence, but then, of course, parents as well, so that they understand this. And
Correct.
like we mentioned earlier, there are picture books and chapter books, which are also phenomenal for different reasons. Your child is not going to pick up a picture book and be able to read it. Picture books actually have more complex vocabulary than most adults use in their daily conversation. They have really
Agree.
unique words. They're great for building background and vocabulary. And I am a huge fan of reading chapter books, even to preschoolers and kindergartners, but they also need the chance to read on their own. And that's what you're providing for them.
Yes, that's exactly true.
So, if a parent of a preschooler or a kindergartner is feeling overwhelmed about teaching their child to read and they're not sure where to begin, do you have any advice for them on where they should start?
Yes. One of the things that I always suggest is it's even like a pre-reading skill is more so developing their language skills, having conversations with your kid and speaking to them. I said, even narrating your day to your baby, oh, let's put on your socks, oh, these socks are blue. Oh, what is that noise that I hear? just giving those words to your kid, you're developing their language. But even after that, one of the things that, helping your children to read is even before letters start, it's based on sound. So, one of the things is like, I spy something that starts with the B sound and, looking, oh, yep, it's the ball, and um, one of the other games that I like, to play or practice is, the mystery word game. All right, I'm going to say some sounds. All right, can you guess the mystery word? T, a, and then see if they can put the sounds together to blend the word. Also, like simple things, learning the alphabet song. I know it's not necessarily a precursor to, reading books, but, knowing the letters of the alphabet, having that name to go with the letter when you're teaching them later on that this is the letter A and A has the sound A. But also rhyming songs, one of the favorites that I always think about is apples and bananas and, changing the vowels and those sounds. Like those are some good, foundational skills I think you can get before even reading. Like in the actual realm of reading, using like continuous blending. So like if a kid is sounding out sounds and they're having a hard time, instead of going ah, stretching those sounds out like map kind of can help them with their reading as well.
Yeah, that's a
Uh,
great tip. Continuous sounds at the beginning of words when we're practicing blending can be such a game changer for kids. Instead of having to segment each sound so separately, having it be that continuous blending and keeping the sound in your mouth. That's what I always tell my kids. Keep the sound in your mouth can make such a big difference.
yes. One other thing that I always, it goes, I feel like hand in hand is writing the letters. Um, you know, a lot of times I feel like the kids that I have in my group who are struggling cannot um, automatically write letters. I mean, right now I have, unfortunately, a couple of third graders who are still, trying to figure out how to write the letter and they're not even using the correct strokes. And I feel like they spend so much brain power on, first thinking about what sound it is, what letter they're going to write, and then how to write it. So, starting at a young age, writing the letters in the proper formation, I feel like is really beneficial for reading and writing.
Totally agree. I think it's so important that they have that handwriting instruction, and it takes so much practice. And if they learn it incorrectly in the beginning or they figure it out on their own and they're drawing the letters, that's what we call it, it's so much harder to go back and correct that. So we can just start from the beginning and making sure that they are having those strokes correctly, using the strokes correctly. It makes a big difference.
Right. And especially like when they're differentiating the letters while they're reading, if you're writing an N and an H and they look very similar on paper and you're not differentiating, saying, well, H is, tall and the N is short, that's going to affect their reading as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, those are great tips. And even for our preschoolers, we always say you don't need to worry about handwriting instruction just yet, but just working on those fine motor skills. We really need them to have the strength in their hand to be able to do the writing, and not just in their hand, but also in their core. I know when they're doing activities standing up, like at an easel or even playing outside, gross motor skills really actually is going to help them with their handwriting later on.
Yep. Setting the foundation.
Yes, I love that. Now, you are such an avid reader yourself. I know you love to read, and most teachers, many teachers do, and that's why we want our students to love reading also. But do you have any favorite preschool or kindergarten books or authors that you think would be super fun for our families to read?
So I was going to say, my favorites are classics. I feel like you will probably already be familiar with Eric Carle and Dr. Seuss. I feel like those to me are essential for preschool and kindergarten. Their stories are repetitive. It has a lot of alliteration, a lot of rhymes, especially with Dr. Seuss. I feel like, there's a lot of decodable words in there that families can read. Um, um, and they're funny. I feel like kids enjoy reading things that are funny and predictable. And the same thing with Eric Carle. I love his illustrations, and I feel like the stories have like a sequence or the different structures where they're short, but they still tell a story, which I feel like sometimes that is missing in some others books. Um, But also I say in general, my biggest, when people say, what can my child read or what do you suggest for them read? I just say anything that your child is interested in. Like if your kid likes to fish, get them a book about fishing. And it's not necessarily that they're reading it independently, but you're building that foundation and that love of reading. Oh, I love this and I can read about it. It's in a book. And I feel like building that love is crucial to wanting them to learn how to read.
I'm totally in agreement with you. I don't gatekeep books for my own kids. They have both read books that maybe I wouldn't pick for them or maybe I wouldn't be interested in, but if they're interested in them, they think they're funny, they want to read them, have at it. As long as it's not something inappropriate or something that would be, including themes that were a little bit too advanced, especially if it have an advanced reader. But for the most part, I just let my kids pick whatever they want. And I think that is so helpful for them to have that autonomy and that freedom to read what they want when they want to. We love going to the library because I always say I feel like Oprah because they're like, can I get this book? I'm like, yes, you get that book and that book and that book. I always say yes. I mean, we have a lot of books checked out from the library currently. I think probably more than I would like to share on this call. We have a lot of books checked out from the library, but it's just because if they're interested in it, great, check it out. It's free. We can always bring it back if you don't like it. I just think that's so important not to stop our kids from reading something if they're interested in it.
Yes, agreed. And that's, you're funny. You're like about Oprah. We go to the library and my son's always amazed, like, wait, I can take as many as I want. And I was like, as long as you're going to read them.
Yes. We have to keep them safe. We have to make sure we bring them back safely. But yes, that's what it's there for.
Exactly.
Well, Lena, this has been so much fun. I am super excited about your decodables. I am relaunching my course for families and of preschool and kindergartners to learn how to read, and your decodables are definitely going to be on my list of recommended resources because, like I said, I have little decodables in there for them to practice the week's phonics skills, but I need them to practice more. And so your books are one of the perfect sets that I can recommend parents can check out.
That is awesome. That definitely makes my heart happy. I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Yes, of course. And actually, I wanted to ask you about the name of your company. We, of course, know that your book series is Jackson Wren, but your name, the name of your company is Decode by Heart. And I would love to hear about how you came up with that name.
Yes. So that was actually, I wanted, like Jackson Wren is the name of the book, but I was like, I want to name the series of books that tell about why I wanted to create it. So, the main reason was that I wanted it to be decodable. So that's where, the decode and, by heart, when you do something by heart, you do it automatically. It takes little effort, but at the same time, with heart, I wanted people to love to read. And when you're learning to read and you're successful at it, that builds a love of reading. So decode by heart is, once you are decoding and you're learning and fluent and accurate with it, that will help spark your passion for loving to read.
That is so sweet. And I totally agree. I think it's a great name, such a fun
Thank
name for
you.
your company.
I appreciate
Now,
it.
where can listeners find you if they want to connect with you, if they want to find your books and they want to learn more about you?
Sure. So I am on Facebook and Instagram, and it's just Decode by Heart. And then if you want to visit me at my website, it's decodebyheartbooks.com.
All right. I will put all of those links in the show notes. And my very last question before we sign off, since this is the Little Left Learning podcast, what do you love most about working with littles?
I love their enthusiasm. I feel like they are excited to be at school. They want to learn. They love you as a teacher. They just come in and they're just, these balls of curiosity. And I also, they're enthusiastic about learning, but I always love that you never know what they're going to say because, their reality of interpreting the world and their filter makes for comical comments a lot of times as well.
So true. We always tell parents at parent teacher conferences, if something's happening at your house, we know about it and probably in the funniest way. They've shared
Yes,
it all with us.
exactly. It's so funny.
Well, Lena, thank you again for your time. This has been so much fun.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me here. It's been fun chatting with you.